Hello and welcome to the Capital Games Movie Club. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
Zero, my man. How you feeling? You're a little under the weather today?
Yeah, a little under the weather, but we'll get through it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good thing that we're talking about a comedy and not something very dour and, miserable that will make your mood even worse. So today we're here to discuss the 2000 horror parody Scary Movie directed by Keenan and Ivory Wayans, starring Anna Faris and Shawn and Marlon Wayans. This came out in 2000, and I think you're the same age as I am to a certain extent. This came out when I was in high school, and I definitely got some nostalgia coming from watching this movie. But I am curious as to, before we get started, know what you think of the movie. When was the first time you watched this?
I want to say maybe around 2003, 2004.
Okay.
And that was from like some friends going, and we'll just kick this on in the background. And that was about it.
Okay. I saw it in the theaters, and it was one of those communal experiences where I think the audience was more flabbergasted that this was what they were watching than it was really laugh out loud. Well, it was pretty funny at the time, but we'll get into it. So now that you've gone and watched it again for the episode, what did you think of Scary Movie?
Yeah, there was a lot of nostalgia going on for me as well, because I was like, man, holy cow, these are some really old jokes. And at the same time, the other thought I had in my head was, there is no way that this could pass off in like today's current society with with how things are.
Nope, not at all. I mean, there are jokes about everybody and everything in this movie, and they do it in probably the most distasteful and probably the most distasteful ways that they can do it. We'll get into that. I have a question. The question of the day is of the week is about that, so we'll skip that part. It's definitely a nostalgic trip. To me, it's a movie that's stuck in its time because it represents so many movies and so many things from 1995 through 1999. Specifically the horror movies of the time, Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, those slasher flicks, than anything else, really. They do reference other movies as well in there, but like there's the Matrix, there's the Matrix joke that happened in the film as well. There's plenty of pop culture references that if you're not aware of those movies, it's going to go right over your head. So I really think this is more like, I'll put it this way. If a person if I showed this to, let's say, an 18 or 19-year-old now, and they have no references to those movies, one, they wouldn't get the joke. Two, they'd probably be greatly offended. And three, they probably wouldn't think it's funny. So this is definitely a movie that you have to be of a certain age to even get the jokes and possibly enjoy it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's a bit unfortunate that it really is a movie stuck in its time, and there's just so much reference material that you would have to have previous experience in order to sort of get the humor and everything.
Right. I don't know if we'll probably get into all that in spoilers when we get to that. Even knowing it was from my time, I didn't laugh as much as I thought I was going to. Like the jokes still stood out in my head even though I haven't seen it in a long time. Like there's so many jokes that when you watch it the first time, back when I was in high school, I should say, where I was like, you can get away with that? Holy shit. So that shock is gone. So, and usually if a movie is good, like There's Something About Mary, I think There's Something About Mary is still a great movie because even though the shock comedy is still there, there's still more to the movie than that makes the movie enjoyable and watchable and very good. That's not the case with Scary Movie. once you know the jokes, once you've been shocked by it, I think it loses its power big time in this. And especially if you don't get the references at all. Like if you don't get what they are referencing in the movie, it's going to go way over your head and you're just going to think this is dumb as hell and you're not going to really enjoy what's going on in the movie, I would think.
And it's a bit sad that the jokes are a bit one note and everything, especially just with a lot of them happening towards the beginning, and then just when they happen again, it's just like, okay, sure.
Yeah. At least this isn't as bad as Scary Movie 2. Scary Movie 2 is awful. Scary Movie 2, I think, is one of the worst sequels ever made of any movie. And Scary Movie isn't a stone cold masterpiece. It's funny. Like, even when I saw it in high school, I thought it was funny. I thought I had a good time, but I wouldn't call it a masterpiece. No, not even close. But Scary Movie 2 essentially recycled the same jokes and made them less funny, which is terrible for that. But yeah, if you're interested in, I guess we should warn people, really. If you're gonna give this movie a shot, there is a lot of gross humor, of course, a lot of jokes about ejaculation, blood, a lot of sexual jokes. What else? Like, God, there's a lot in this where, yeah, you would have to write an entirely huge article to go over what people might be offended by in this movie.
Yeah, it would just look like a gigantic laundry list of warnings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like, one of the big jokes of the movie that they play up for laughs is one of the female characters is essentially a giant slut. Essentially, she sleeps around a lot. So, and I can see a certain crowd going, "Oh, that's not sex positive. What's wrong with that?" I'm like, yeah, right, sure. So yeah, like I don't think unless they're open-minded enough, I wouldn't recommend this to somebody under the age of 30, which is terrible to say, but I wouldn't. It's God, man, and there's two reasons. One, I don't think they could handle the humor, and two, it's funny in spots, but it wouldn't be something that I would I wouldn't risk someone seeing and getting offended. Like, Blazing Saddles is a movie where I would say, I don't care if you could get offended, but this is really funny and you should watch this. Like, I can recommend Blazing Saddles. This movie, no. I wouldn't be able to do that. It would be one of those, if out of 5, it'd be a 2.5 star out of 5 movie that's kind of a guilty pleasure that reminds me of what comedy used to be. And maybe for good and for bad that it's not anymore, but it's just basically a window back into the past of how comedy was, like in the late 90s, early 2000s. This was in 2000. So it'd be like, yeah, late 90s, early 2000s. So, yeah, I would really only recommend it to people who haven't seen it and that are possibly our age and can handle offensive humor to a certain extent.
The only way I would be able to recommend this to anyone under 30 would be that they would have to completely disconnect their mind of societal norms today.
God. Yeah.
And just try to keep the perspective that, hey, just this is a product of its time. The humor reflects that that it's something from late 90s, early 2000s, and that's the only way I could make the recommendation, in all honesty.
Yeah. Do you want to get into spoilers, or do you want to talk a little more about the movie before that?
We're probably good to go into spoilers.
Wow, this is going by fast. Okay, if you haven't seen Scary Movie, we are about to spoil the movie. If you want, you can turn this off, watch it, and come back. We're going to get started in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, this movie will offend everybody, essentially. It didn't really... Back when it was released, I remember the only people who were offended were religious people and people who, how do I put this? Were prudish, I guess? Prudish?
Yeah.
Or prudish or really liked their stuff milquetoast. Like, non-offensive, doesn't rock the boat, doesn't offend someone's sensibilities in any way. This movie, this movie doesn't do that. There's jokes about suicide. There's jokes about homosexuality. There's jokes about black people. There's jokes about white people. There's jokes about sex positivity. There's jokes about what else? My God, fat people, mental disabilities. There are a ton of jokes in this movie that people, if Twitter would watch it today, their heads would explode. They'd be like, "Oh my God, how did this ever get released?" It's like, yeah, well, we could laugh at things back then. That's the problem. But
yeah. Especially one of the jokes towards the end, which is more of a jab towards people who were really disruptive back in the late 90s, early 2000s in theaters. That one would be misconstrued 8 ways from Sunday in today's society.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Specific jokes. I mean, there's references to The Matrix. That's towards the end. A whole subplot is something from I Know What You Did Last Summer, which they play with some laughs. Scream I think is the one that they are they mainly make fun of the most in this. So so if you don't like any of those films, like, it's not even worth watching this, I would say. And then you get to, I think, Shawn Wayans' character, who, if you can look at it in the right way, you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as them making fun of gay people, which I don't see that at all. I see it as somebody who is so delusional about who he is that he fails to recognize, like, his not his attitude, but the way he acts a certain way. Like, there are so many jokes where the joke is that not everyone, but he acts like he's a homosexual. He acts like somebody who, like, really likes men and is really attracted to men, and that's the big joke of the movie. He calls his girlfriend Brenda Brendan during a scene. He has her dress up in football pads. There's the way that he quote unquote died the second time. The first time was funny too, but the second time was a little on the nose. But yeah, there's and then the sex stuff in this movie is flat out gross at times.
Yeah, it's extremely gratuitous. I mean, hell, you don't get past the first 10-15 minutes without, like, a sex reference already been being thrown right away, with Drew's father driving down and being distracted by his wife and oral favors and everything.
Yeah.
And right in the intro, it's just like, holy shit, this movie just throws it right out there.
And they use that joke constantly, because when they do the I Know What You Did Last Summer reference, and the guy is stuck out the window and gets stuck in a beehive, and he's shoving his foot on the main character's face. Wait, we didn't see a different cut, did we?
No.
Okay. The one scene where they kill the guy that references I Know What You Did Last Summer is another oral sex reference in the movie. God. What else? I mean, yeah, like, they make fun of everyone in this film. Almost, and it's to the point where I don't. Yeah, I don't think this movie could be made at all.
Yeah, there's just no way with today's modern sensibilities. There's just no way.
Yeah, we will get into that. So, yeah.
And then of course, one of the killing scenes that's just really really fucking goofy was the scene where trying to remember her name, Buffy. Buffy gets killed and everything, where she ends up just hurting herself. It's just like wow, that is pretty gratuitous and everything. But it was her completely playing into the whole slasher flick tropes and everything. It's like, oh, am I supposed to run? And then she kind of does like a half-assed run. Then she's like, am I supposed to scream in fear? Okay.
Yeah, but
it's just like, ooh, wow, this is just kind of laying into the tropes.
Right, but they also overdid that completely. Like,
oh yeah, agreed.
It should have ended basically when he kills her. For her to come back while she's beheaded and go, oh, I'm beheaded. I'm like, oh, God, come on. Like, all right, whatever. Like that kind of killed that scene for me. God, what else really? I mean, there's the pedophilia joke with Cindy's dad. Basically, like, did you get your this is for those who aren't aware. I mean, we found this stuff funny back then. Now it's now I would say I would be like, oh, that's wrong, and not like a ha ha ha, this is wrong. That I'd be more like, ew, that's fucking wrong. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, I could see most people just looking at a lot of the jokes in here going, wow, that's tasteless, Jesus.
Yeah. Let's see, what else? The drug references. Lots of weed references. Lots of them in this. One character is literally a huge stoner. And that's his character. That's it. And some would get offended by that. God, there is so much people would be offended by in this. I guess that's also to its credit to a certain extent. Maybe? I don't...
Yeah, I would say in kind of a real, I guess you can say crude sense, that it makes no qualms that it discriminates and makes jokes about everybody.
Right. And that should be fine. I mean, the whole notion of quote unquote punching down is ridiculous when you go after everybody. Because all right, I was going to, you know what? Let's do the question now. The question I had today was basically, could comedies like this come back, and how? Let me get your take on that. Could a comedy like this come back, and how could it, if it can?
Oof. It would, if it could come back, in my opinion, it would be a Herculean task. Mm-hmm. It would be extremely Herculean because with today's current Twitterati, I could just see them just lambasting this movie, calling for the doxing of the director, the writer, organizing harassment protests against the writers and director of the movie. Just honestly, I struggle to find a way that something like this could be made with today's sensibilities in my mind. It just seems almost like an impossible task.
Yeah, it could happen. You just need somebody who just doesn't give a shit, or somebody who has enough clout, who basically people will not give him any issue to make that movie, and then it gets released, and then it does well. And then people just don't say anything, and then people realize, oh, this isn't so bad. Like, I'll put it this way, okay? Jordan Peele. I think Jordan Peele visually is an outstanding director. I like the way he eyes his film. I like the way he shoots it. I just don't like horror. So I didn't like Get Out as much as a lot of people do. So, and I think that mainly is the reason why, because I just don't like horror movies. But he seems to be doing all horror. I think if he went ahead and did a comedy like this, people would give him a shot. I think people would be like, "Oh yeah, it's Jordan Peele. Why wouldn't like?" And he would do something grossly offensive. I think he would get away with it. And then when he gets away with it, that opens the floodgates for everybody to do it. You would need somebody you would need somebody like that. Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx directed a film that has been finished for quite some time, and it has Robert Downey Jr. in it. And Robert Downey Jr. plays a Latino drug dealer in the movie. Like, he does his shtick that he did in Tropic Thunder, which is he race swapped. And basically, Jamie Foxx has gone on record and said, "I'm afraid to release this film. Like, I'm not sure if I want to release this film, really, because of how people are nowadays." And that sucks, because it's just like the whole thing with Batgirl, okay? Everyone who was pissed off that Batgirl got canceled, okay, all said, "Well, how do you know it's bad unless we all see it?" And I was like, okay, fine, but you're not the one putting the money down. And, if they're saying it's bad, like, at that point, why would they spend more money to get it out there so people can hate it? But this is the opposite. And I'm surprised no one's not pointing out that that these people who, let me also state for the record, are mostly white liberals, by the way, who are telling a black man that you can't release your movie the way you want it because it could offend their sensibilities. How fucking racist is that? I mean, for good God, give the man a chance. He has the movie completed. It's done. He spent the money on it. I think there is somebody who wants to release it. He's just afraid to do it because he's afraid to get the backlash. And a part of me wants to say, suck it up and just release it. But I also understand, because this guy also does, I think he hosts shows. He has other lucrative things that he does. And all it could take is one stupid controversy for all of that to come tumbling down. And that fucking sucks. The honest thing is, you just need somebody brave enough and who is a good enough director and a good enough writer to release the film, show everybody that it's funny, you can laugh at it, it's not a problem, and then the whole house of cards just falls down. But you need that one person. And that's the problem, because we don't have that one person yet, and that's what sucks about it, really. My opinion on it, at least.
Yeah, and I mean, I could probably agree that just you would need somebody who's just brave enough to just say, you know what, to hell with it. I'm just gonna push this out. This movie makes fun of everyone and everything, so just. This is how it is, so just fucking deal with it.
Yeah. Like, I wonder, okay? I wonder if Tyler Perry started the Madea franchise now, would it be successful or would he get canceled? Have you watched any of the Madea movies?
It's been many years.
Okay. They're not my cup of tea. I will be honest. But there is a large audience that loves these movies. Black, white, Latino. There is a large audience for these films. Again, not my cup of tea. But they do wallow in stereotypes. They do use stereotypes for comedy. And their audience is completely fine with it. But if, my opinion, if Tyler Perry were to make his movie now, if he made Diary of a Mad Black Woman now, he'd get canceled. They would not allow him to do it. And as much as I don't like the Madea movies, they're not offensive at all. they're barely anything, really. Like, they don't offend my delicate sensibilities. I just don't find them funny. But there is a large audience that does. So how do you... God. Okay. My thing, I think, and I guess we'll go back to Scary Movie after this. My big issue with, I guess, society right now is that we can't laugh at each other or ourselves. I think we've talked about this off the podcast, Zero. When we can't laugh at each other or ourselves, what are we going to do at that point? Because then we can't poke fun at each other. We can't celebrate our differences. We can't, like, I get there's some people who are malicious that make fun of people, and that's wrong, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just jabs here, poking fun, like old 90s jokes about the difference between black people and white people driving. Like, stupid jokes like that would offend people now, which just infuriates me to no end. But until we are able to, like, laugh at each other and stuff, like, you've joked with me about, like, with things I've said because I'm white. I mean, I don't care. I know for a fact that there are some things that I do mainly because I am a white person that's exclusive to white people. I get that. You'd have to be stupid not to realize that. But if we can't make fun of each other, we can't joke about each other, or we can't joke about ourselves, most of all, if you can't have a sense of humor about yourself, we're never going to move forward in this time. Because if we can't laugh at each other and stuff like that, I don't know. I think this does more damage to us as a society than more along those lines than it does just in movies and TV in itself. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I pretty much kind of feel that it's almost sort of a lost topic for society at large today. Just when we're able to kind of just joke and make fun of either ourselves or just the world at large, just it kind of humanized things in a way, so to speak. Like, for me, I'm really big on self-depreciating humor, or just dark comedy about myself and circumstances. Like, something terrible happens to me, I'll just kind of try to laugh it off and go, "Wow, shit! Just that would have sucked if this thing went just the wrong way in this direction or something." And of course, just nowadays you would have some people who would just go, "Wow, that's fucked up to think of things like that." And I'm just like, no, it's not. It's more me making a very sardonic light of my situation, but just it's not me saying something crass or something like, "God, I wish I was dead." That's not what I was saying at all.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm one that appreciates self-depreciating humor too. When I had my I've had mental health issues for a long time now. When I was seeing when I was talking to a mental health professional once, and I just said a joke about myself. She was going to use that as a way to my self-depreciating humor. She was going to use that as an excuse to say maybe you should be institutionalized because clearly you think so low of yourself, you think X. And her superior had to say, "It's self-depreciating humor. Stop it." I'm like,
holy cow.
I'm like, whoa, really? That is awful. But yeah, like, honestly, we'll go back to films really now. At this point, it looks like comedies they're only going to be successful if they're throwbacks. So, like, throwbacks to, like, 90s standard rom-coms, 80s comedies, like, stuff like that. And that's not a road I want to go down, really. Like, I'm also looking at popular comedies on Google. Half of these movies aren't comedies. Everything Everywhere All at Once, Licorice Pizza, The Lost City. They're comedy adjacent, but they're action comedies. I would say Licorice Pizza is a drama with comedy. Bad Boys for Life, that's an action comedy. Coda is not a comedy. I don't know what that's doing there. But it seems like people are just afraid to do these types of comedies now. To do almost any type of comedies now. Unless it has a specific group of people, and they're making fun of a specific group of people, then that could be okay. But even then, someone's going to get offended, and that will cause a controversy, and that will cause problems that maybe a distributor won't want to deal with. So we're just in this perpetual cycle that, since we can't laugh at each other at all, and we can't make fun of each other, that basically comedies have to be bland, milquetoast, and have stupid one-liners in order for them to be made. And I'm sorry, that fucking sucks. That's terrible. Like, I miss, like, I'll even say it now, I miss the comedies of the 90s and the 2000s. Like, there are some damn good comedies there. And yes, they were offensive at times, but they weren't maliciously offensive. They were just, they poked fun. So I don't know. Do you want to talk more about Scary Movie?
I think we've pretty much covered most of the bases on it.
Yeah, Scary Movie really, it is a movie for its time, really, isn't it? Like, it's definitely to me, it more or less reminded me of the past and what I found to be shocking and like, oh my God. Like, it kind of reminded me of why I liked Scary Movie back then. And it was more or less I can't believe people can get away with this, more than this is legitimately funny. There are some funny parts in it, but I don't think it's, like I said before, it's not something I would sit down with somebody who may not be into offensive movies and say, you have to see this. Like, I wouldn't do that with this movie specifically. You want to get into our final thoughts?
Yeah.
All right, why don't you go ahead?
As far as final thoughts go, Scary Movie, unfortunately, is a product of its time. I would find this very hard to recommend, as I've said in the beginning, mostly because of the fact that just it is a product of its time. You have to, one, sort of get the reference of a lot of the mid-90s to early 2000s slasher flicks to really understand where some of these references and jokes are coming from, but also the fact that just Keenan Ivory Wayans wrote the movie to pretty much just offend everybody. Just, I don't think that there would be a way for anyone with modern day sensibilities to unplug themselves and just go, okay, I'm just gonna see this for what it is and just try to just keep the chattering in the back of my mind from going off. And that's just the situation on how it is. But also the jokes and the premise of a lot of the gags are kind of one note. So they're initially funny maybe the first time around, but then they just kind of lose their impact real quickly. And then there are even some cases where just some of the jokes maybe go on for far longer than they should. Kind of like the scene that we had referenced with Buffy being murdered in the girls' locker room and everything.
Yeah.
So, if you're a person who can kind of disconnect their mind for a bit, maybe give it a watch to kind of, see what humor and writing was like back in the early 2000s. But yeah, just as much as some of the parts were kind of funny and all that, I just really think it just is a hard movie to recommend to anyone to see.
I mean, I'd recommend it to people that understand that this is, like you said, a product of its time, that it deals in comedy that we don't deal with anymore, that they don't do anymore. You're right on a couple points. I think I agree with you on a couple points. The jokes that landed the hardest for me when I first saw it were more shocking that they got away with it than they were funny. Once that's gone, some of the jokes don't land that well. So yeah, there's that. It's okay. It's not a movie that I would defend vigorously to somebody. Like Blazing Saddles is that movie to me. Like if someone were to say, like I could never watch Blazing Saddles because of X, like no, that's a legitimately great movie. Like Scary Movie, I could care less. Like I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. But there are some funny parts in the movie. There's some funny gags. They don't have the impact that they used to. And if you don't get the references, a lot of it's going to go over a lot of people's heads. So you need to be of a specific age to understand specific references that the movie is referencing. So I would limitedly recommend it to people, I guess, that grew up between the years 1995 and 2000. Those are and who likes gross out comedy. Like those, I would be that limited to who I recommend it to. But yeah, other than that, it's okay. I guess not as funny as I remember it, is what I would say at this point. All right, Zero. Yeah. So go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say totally agree.
Yeah. All right, Zero. So we've already did our question of the day, and on that note, we are at the end of the episode. But before we go, we're going to talk about our next topic and our next movie. Here's the thing. I'm not going to let go what the topic is, okay? Because the topic is going to basically ruin what these movies are. So I want to keep this hidden for Zero. So basically, we're going to be watching a movie. I gave Zero a list of movies that something they all have in common. I'm not going to tell you the list, but we're going to watch next week V for Vendetta. I forgot who directed it. James McTeague? Oh my God, I haven't heard him in a while. Wow. Yeah, so V for Vendetta, 2005 movie directed by James McTeague, starring Hugo Weaving and Natalie Portman and John Hurt. So we'll be watching that next week. And Zero, you'll choose for next week. Excited, Zero?
Yeah. I mean, it's something I haven't watched, so it'll be interesting to see how it ends up.
This is a celebrated movie. In fact, if I recall correctly, this is on the top 250 of IMDb. Yeah, it's 159 out of 250 from IMDb. So already I'm setting it up for failure. But yeah. So this will be interesting. So next week, tune in next week to where we watch and discuss V for Vendetta, starring Natalie Portman and Hugo Weaving, directed by James McTeague. I am The Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
And we'll talk to you next week.